Coffee with the Editor is proudly brought to you by IRZ.
Steve, thank you very much for joining me for Coffee with the Editor. United National Transport Union.
Correct.
UNTU. Did I have the pronunciation right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
My pleasure. So you guys play quite an important role in terms of the transport sector, certainly with our three main operators, and then you've added the rail safety regulator to your portfolio as well. Give me some background and history to the trade association.
Yes, we've gone through a lot of mergers over the years. I mean, if you look at our history, the South African Footplate Staff Association was established in 1905. And then the South African the Artisan Staff Association, which was predominantly technical people, was established in 1924. And then we grew obviously from there onwards. And then in the South African Railways Harbours, you had, in the mid-80s, you had about 14 unions.
Wow.
But you must understand that we had 279,000 employees working for the South African Railways. And
how do those figures compare to now?
well, obviously we've down to about 55,000. The latest figure is about 49,000 junior employees, and the rest is managerial employees, which rounds off at about 62,000.
So from 295,000
279,000
through to
to where we are
60.
today. Yeah,
Wow.
that's a drastic decrease, and that has obviously affected not only the country, but also affected jobs, and also affected the unions, because at that point in time we were segregated to the effect that certain unions only represented certain groups of staff, certain grades, and that's how it was done, and that's how we ended up with 14 trade unions in the process. But coming back to our history, and I'll come back to the actual transport service of South African Railways Harbours. We then, in 93, the Artisan Staff Association changed its name to Technical Workers Union, and then we started recruiting all grades. And South African Footplate Staff Association remained as it was, and then from 93 we tried to merge with cell staff, and cell staff were predominantly administrative employees, and we saw obviously the history. The history was starting to take its toll, because the artisan staff was down to about 9,000 members, where we peaked at 25,082, and cell staff was down to about 14,000. And I think they also peaked at about 30,000 at one stage. And Footplate was they also peaked in their 20s, and they were down at about 8,500. And obviously we believe that we can become a much better organized union, and we can serve our constituents on a better way if we join forces in the process. And in 93, that didn't work. We then tried again in 98, and then cell staff withdrew from the discussions, and then in 99 we as the Technical Workers Union then, and South African Footplate Staff Association, which was predominantly the train drivers and train assistants and guards and yard masters, etc. We then decided, let's cut the nonsense and let's get the late Professor Nick Via to facilitate the talks, and he then managed to get us an agreement, and we merged in 2000, November 2000, and we formed the United Transport and Allied Trade Union. And then in 2011 we started talks with a breakaway group from Satao, which then re-registered themselves as Sarvu. And the reason for that being, we went on strike in 2006, and one of the issues we spoke about was a recognition agreement, and management was quite clear that the recognition, you had to have 30% in total in Transnet to be recognized, and you had to have 30% within each division of Transnet. So to be able to safeguard ourselves, we then entered into discussions with Sarvu, and we merged with them in June 2012, and we then registered ourselves because we could not see eye to eye on a common or name. We then agreed to register ourselves as UNTU Sarvu in June 2012. And then obviously we were going to conference in November 2015. That would have been the inaugural conference. And in November 2014 we changed our name to United National Transport Union. So that is our rich history that we look back at. And yes, we've gone through a lot of ups and downs in the process. As I explained earlier on, the South African Railways Harbours was 279,000 employees. We went through a downsize in 85, 87, where a lot of people were given packages. And unfortunately, people believe that they can take packages and eventually make a living for themselves. And unfortunately, a disaster struck. We saw a lot of people ending up on the streets. We saw a lot of people trying to get back into the company. And that was quite a difficult part of our history to go through.
Was that in relation to the upcoming political transformation that we were about to go through in 87? Or was it just the efficiencies that were naturally coming through?
No, it was also a decision of government in 81, in the 70s, to reorganize the South African Railways Harbours to become more businesslike.
Okay.
And then in 1980 they transformed and created SAT, South African Transport Services. And we were then downsized tremendously in that process because they started looking at the efficiencies. Obviously played a major role, and obviously they started then ensuring that they work on more efficient ways and more business-like organizations, and that created a major shift for us. As trade unions, we had to start adapting as to what is happening in the private sector, and it was quite a difficult portion of our history to have gone through, because employees obviously weren't used to the productive sort of pressures that private companies are under, and we had to adapt or die. And obviously,
it is a different mindset. Eh?
Exactly, it was a different mindset, and I think we overcame that, and we were fortunate that we've been very successful. And then in '94, Transnet became SATS became Transnet in the new dispensation, and ever since then we've been a PTY SOC limited company, and we've been working on normal business principles to be profitable as far as possible. And if you look at the history of the company, we've managed to upkeep that, and we've managed also to grow our membership from within. I mean, when we merged, we were about 25,000. We're now at about 36,000. We've also realized as a trade union that you need to give back to members, and hence the fact we have changed our views, and we have tried to incorporate within the membership fees that members pay certain benefits that they can get back. For argument's sake, as an example, ladies are paid a maternity benefit for one confinement if she has been a member for more than 12 months, and then we pay them 1,750. So that's what we brought in. We had other benefits that we just continued with.
You've also got the medical aid and...
Well, the medical aids is part of the company's benefit.
Okay.
It's part of your remuneration package, which we've negotiated over the years.
All right.
So we haven't got a separate pension fund or a separate medical aid that's run by the union.
Okay.
It's part of the package and the remuneration.
The corporate package.
The corporate package, yeah.
Okay.
So we've managed to be able to do that. And then we've also added benefits, discounts on vehicles, discounts at holiday resorts. So I think we've done specifically well as not just taking members' money without trying to give something back to them at the end of the day.
So as a trade association, aside from the benefits and things like that, what is your kind of core role? What are you charged to do?
Well, obviously we charge to improve benefits of employees where we can, to negotiate salaries when salaries are due for negotiations to the best of our ability, to deal with disputes as they arise from day to day, to assist members in disciplinary inquiries, and assist members in daily grievances that they might have, because there is a grievance policy within the various organisations we are represented in, and our shop stewards deal with those things on a daily basis.
So you have shop stewards at every single organisation at the various...
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
We have shop stewards, and we have then elected branch officers in the various areas, and then we are very fortunate that we have negotiated recognition agreements with the two major parties being Passenger Rail South Africa and Transnet. And in those agreements they give us a certain number of full-time union representatives. Those people are then released on a permanent basis, and they only do basically union representation, and they represent the union at all forums where they are required to do so, in consultation matters, in arbitration, etc. So we're very fortunate as far as that's concerned.
The demographics of UNTU?
The demographics at this point has grown obviously because of the change in the demographics in the country, and we're proud to say that we around about 80% demographics representative and 20% whites. And unfortunately our executive council doesn't really reflect that, but then again in 2015 when the executive council was elected, they were elected by a congress that was represented by about 70% demographic members, and their demographic elected shop stewards and representatives.
Right.
So we are proud to be able to say that we are representative, and we try and do the utmost to represent our members to the best of our ability. And we obviously look after their funds to the best of our ability. We're also proud to be able to say that in my 37 years, I'm fortunate to be able to confirm we've never had a qualified audit.
Okay.
So we pride ourselves as looking after the funds of the members, because it's not our money, it's members' money at the ultimate, and we need to ensure that we deal with it rationally and fairly as far as that's concerned.
So something you mentioned just now, which I thought was quite intriguing, and probably in my naivety that I don't understand this. You mentioned that Transnet needed like a 30% representation. So in other words, 30% of its workforce needed to be members of a certain association in which, for it to be recognized. What does that actually mean?
Well, Transnet...
And has that number changed over the years?
The number, yes. In 2007, when we signed the first recognition agreement, Transnet then demanded 30%. And obviously we've maintained that 30% and we've grown. And we're in excess of 52% at Transnet now. It has brought about that there's only 2 trade unions left at the end of the day, which is ourselves and Satal, which is our compatriots that also are in Transnet and also recognised. And obviously it's brought about stability, a lot of stability in the sense that you haven't got this continual, shall I say, differences of 4 or 5 parties when it comes to negotiations, when it comes to consultation processes. It makes it easier to be able to reach consensus.
So it's streamlined.
To streamline it as far as that's concerned. And yes, we have in 2017 we signed a new recognition agreement and we decreased the 30% to 25%. But the difference with the 25% is now you only need 25% of the total in Transnet.
Okay.
So whereas the old agreement was 30% within Transnet and 30% per operational division, they've moved that now down to 25%, but only Transnet-wide. So if I have, for argument's sake, 10% in a particular operation division, but I have 25% in Transnet in totality, then I'm still recognised.
Okay. So over the last couple of months, UNTU yourself in particular, have been quite vocal about some of the things that have been happening in industry, such as the Minister of Transport and PRASA and the trains and fires and stuff happening at Transnet as well. So my question to you is, what is your view of what's happening at our rail-related state-owned companies?
Obviously, specifically Passenger Rail South Africa, and I'll come to Transnet. We are very disappointed as what's happened in that particular business, because in 2006, when we agreed to the separation from Transnet to Passenger Rail South Africa, the idea that we had as Labour and as government at that point in time was to create a passenger service, a one-stop shop that you could move, say, from point A in UNTU by bus to the nearest rail station, then jump on a train and move to Johannesburg by train, and then if I needed to go, there was no passenger train from Johannesburg to where I needed to go, was to get a connection on the bus, and that was the ideal solution. That's what we aimed for.
Yes.
But obviously we haven't achieved that, and to the detriment of the constituents of this country, because we haven't been able to ensure that we have a decent public transport system. And obviously one of the problems that have sufficed is when Metro Rail was with Transnet, it was cross-subsidized by Transnet. And when we did the split, Treasury cannot come and say today they did not know what the value of contribution from Treasury would have to be to ensure that we keep a safe and constant rail service running.
Yeah, so it's been documented.
Unfortunately, Treasury has not kept to their promise, and obviously things have deteriorated. and hence the fact we found that they've had to now reinvest 127 billion to try and upgrade rail lines, signalling systems, and obviously you've seen the latest, as we call them, the blue trains that they're bringing into the system that has been built out at Nigel. But it's unfortunate that we've lost a lot of expertise in PRASA. And obviously the landscape has changed. There's a lot of issues that have come to the fore which we did not have to deal with at the time when Metro Rail was with Transnet. And government has not really been able to deal with those issues. And those issues have brought about tremendous hardship for our commuters and also for our own employees, bringing about people being attacked.
Do you think Transnet knew what it was doing when it unbundled that division?
At that point in time, we did not expect and did not foresee that this would happen. And that's why I say, as trade unions at the time and as government, there was a collective mindset as to the reason why we would split them, but with a clear understanding that there will be proper subsidization, and that hasn't come to the fore.
No.
And obviously, I think we left it too late from government side to start investing and upgrading the old, because they knew, they cannot say they did not knew that at the time in 2006 we were heading for disaster because of the age of what we were working with. And unfortunately, as circumstances had developed, a lot of expertise has left the organization, and we sit today with people that don't have the expertise to be able to run the system, and the country pays dearly for that today because we're not capable of running a safe organization, a safe transport system for commuters, and our employees are obviously not safe anymore. We did not foresee cable theft coming. We did not foresee the effect that cable theft would have on the system itself. And then obviously we did not foresee that the effects of the delays that cable theft would bring about. And obviously it's gone further than cable theft. It's now gone to the stage where rail is attacked. They're even cutting rail lines, and then you have those circlips that actually keep the rail line tied down to the rail to ensure that there's no derailments. They're starting to even steal those, and that's why we've had a few derailments in the Gauteng area where trains have derailed. Fortunately, in those instances, there's been no major disasters, but that's where we're facing, and Transnet faces the exact same thing. Even their rail lines are at risk as far as that's concerned. And you can imagine, specifically theirs, because they're out on the open lines, whereas PRASA's lines are within the communities, but that also brings another problem as far as that's concerned.
What do you think the solutions are? I mean, how do you address that?
Well,
should PRASA go back to Department of Public Enterprise, or should Transnet be reintegrated? Should it all be within one ministry?
We have the view at this point in time, because of all the expertise we've lost, that PRASA should be reintegrated into Transnet, or it should be kept as a separate state-owned entity, but under the Ministry of the Public Enterprises, so that we can ensure there's better collaboration between the parties, as we have experienced over the years, that there has been no partnership in the interest of the country at large. And this has been to the detriment of commuters, to the detriment of the two businesses, because we sit currently with a situation where specifically mainline passenger service, which is part of passenger rail, owed Transnet 1.5 billion for the use of mainline services. Now, we have sat down with, prior to Mr. Gama being axed, and we pleaded with him to write off the money, but he was quite clear that the board was adamant that PRASA should pay the money, and so it just doesn't make sense. I mean, it's two state-owned enterprises at the end of the
Trying
day.
to profiteer off each other.
Yeah, exactly. and we find that totally unacceptable. And hence the fact we believe if it was one ministry, it would just be a matter of getting the two parties to sit down and reorganizing how they quantify the costs of whatever they are utilizing.
That's almost double dipping, isn't it? Because
Yes.
were they charged when it was all together? I mean, they obviously weren't paying those
No,
fees,
when they
were
were together, they weren't paying. You know, it was covered by Transnet because, and what also made it worse, and which we were totally against in 2009 when they moved over mainline passenger services, which is your long distance trains, is that you had the situation now where they moved train drivers that predominantly drove passenger trains over to PRASA, and that became problematic because, to give you an example, you would take the passenger train that leaves Joburg down to either Eastern Cape or down to the Western Cape, and he would take the train down to Kroonstad, and he'd get off there and they'd have to send a combi to go and collect him. Whereas had they remained within Transnet, and Transnet bought, PRASA bought in that service, or they had a memorandum of understanding, how would they share the costs? Because prior to that, those people would be used. He would also use and drive the mainline passenger service down to Kroonstad, and then he'll bring back a goods train.
Exactly.
And,
that's more efficient.
Very much more efficient, and we could just not get government to see that they were going the wrong way. We've even tried in the interim, before Mr. Gama had left and Lucky Montana was still there, we tried to get them to review that particular portion. And as we sit here today, mainline passenger services is virtually non-existent because of the costs and because of the very small portion of subsidy that they are getting. And the subsidy that they are getting is pittance to the expenses that they have to be able to run the business.
So I find it quite incredible because it's a no-brainer in terms of public transport is a service. It's not going to make you wealthy, it's a service, and it is essentially subsidized by government. So I find it incredible that we now find that we're astounded that we're in this position when it was a fait accompli.
Well, you know, it makes it very difficult if I look back and if we knew this we would find ourselves in this difficult situation in 2006 and 2009 when we agreed to the move from Transnet. We wouldn't have agreed to it at that point in time because, but obviously all the parties were adamant and knew what was in, because Treasury was part of the discussions at that point in time. Treasury did number crunching to see what was it that they had to come up with to be able to subsidize both Metro Rail and mainline passenger services. Because as you say, worldwide these passenger services are subsidized and you cannot run it without a subsidy.
And it wasn't new news in 2006,
No,
it's old news.
Well, it was old news because, I mean, all the costs was definitely carried by Transnet at that point in time through the profits that they were making.
So how do you, as part of looking after the workers' rights, How do you balance that between what's happening in the economy at the same time? I mean, I'll take the Gautrain industrial action. That wasn't fun.
It was
As a commuter, it was not fun.
I can assure you, it was not fun to be out there on strike action. But unfortunately, you know, one tries to negotiate to the best of your ability. And if you sit, and I'm going to refer to Bombela specifically, the Gautrain, where the company would not provide us their financials for whatever reason. And we don't believe they had good reason. They believe that their current agreements do not allow them to make available their financials and their agreements. So it makes it very difficult for trade union to sit on the other end of the table and just to accept what management is saying. These are the affordabilities they have. And whilst at the same time the company was paying bonuses in excess of 400,000 to its management cadre, but the junior employees, which were actually running the business and bringing the money in, they weren't even part of a incentive scheme whatsoever. So that was one of the major bones of contentions, was the incentive scheme, and was the fact that the company was not open to its making its financial figures available to us, which made negotiations very difficult.
Being devil's advocate here, that obviously had a significant impact on the patronage or the numbers of Gautrain, and I'm not entirely sure it ever really recovered from a numbers perspective. Do you guys or do your members also share the responsibility of restoring confidence and trust in the system?
Yeah, well, obviously, you know, while we're out on strike, you have that situation where customers believe that we're on strike and our strike is not in their interest. And
I don't mean that.
Yeah,
really
and they don't support our demands.
Post-strike.
Yeah, but yes, I think at the end of the day, once we get back to the working environment after the strike, you know, you've got to restore those trust relationships, and you can only restore it by ensuring that you're effective in your service delivery. And I think if we look back at where Bombela is today, it has been able to do that. Okay. And it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
It takes some time. Yes, it does have a lagging situation, and it's very difficult to make up that money. Once the money is lost on both ends, on the members that are on strike, you've lost the money. You can never make up that money. And it's the price that you pay for going on strike, unfortunately. And obviously, from an employer's perspective, that's the price the employer has to pay by not ensuring that they reach an agreement. And so it's not a win-win situation at the end of the day, but unfortunately that's our last resort and our power base that we have, and which we obviously use as a last resort.
So let's talk about worker security. Lots of bad press coming out from like the Western Cape, and I think in Gauteng as well, drivers being stabbed and commuters being hurt and stuff like that. Is the ministry taking it seriously? Is PRASA taking it seriously? I see there's a security contract or tender that's just come out.
Well, obviously we don't believe that the ministry and the company and even the board has taken it serious up until our last meeting that we had, which at this point in time I believe is lip service. Obviously we'll have to wait and see what comes from the discussions that we had. It was the first time that we met with the board, and I was quite surprised that it was the whole board that was present.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was quite welcoming to see that they were willing to eventually talk to us. But this is after months and months of trying to get to their level, to try and have decent discussions as to what our concerns is, why are we raising these concerns. The minister to date has not met with us. He's refused point blank, and I say this quite frankly because he's not responded to any of our requests whatsoever.
And what is the kind of message that you're getting from that? Like he has no interest in workers, he has no interest in
obviously
organisation,
that gives us a direct message that he's not concerned as a minister to the commuters, and those commuters are his electorates, and obviously he's got no concern about that. I don't know what concerns he has and why he has held that view up to date, and he did again just bring lip service to the fore after the state president got stuck for 4 hours or 5 hours, and
I haven't seen the plan. You're talking about a plan. I haven't seen the plan.
Well, this is it. The plan is still very far away. We haven't seen it either, and if the state president had spoken to us, we would have told him up front that you're going to get stuck, because we knew that that particular line has a history of delays because of manual working, manual authorizations, because the cables have not been working for over a year.
They're not working, or they keep getting stolen?
Well, they keep getting stolen and they just haven't been working. And the problem that we faced as well with is that there has been a major problem from our point of perspective with regards to the rail safety regulator also reporting to the same ministry, because where does the minister now take his instructions from, or how does he put, what decision does he take? The rail safety regulator is saying to him, Minister, your rails are, your operator is not operating in a safe mode, and you must stop the service. He says, I can't stop the service because if I stop the service, I'm going to have chaos.
Yes.
So, you know, it's just unheard of that a rail safety regulator reports to the same minister. I mean, if you look at air traffic, when SA Express was grounded and Airlink was grounded, the Minister of Public Enterprises didn't intervene. It took its punishment, and it took its. They had to align themselves with the requirements, and then they had to get the airways back up and running. Now you sit with the Minister of Transport, where he has a regulator reporting to him, and he's responsible for the operator. So.
And this is the chaos that you're coming up against.
This is the chaos.
Where the rail safety regulator says you may not operate.
Exactly.
Grounds everything. And 2 hours later, thanks to what I call political interference, because there must have been a whole lot of meetings behind closed doors.
There was.
Because the end result is chaos.
That's it, exactly. And that's why the rail safety regulator ended up in the High Court last year. And there was a agreement then made by the judge, but he also cited the minister. Obviously the minister was furious. He wanted them to stay out of the courts. He didn't want the courts to get involved, and but unfortunately I think the rail safety regulator stood their ground as far as that's concerned, and they said, well, we cannot allow the operator to operate under these circumstances, and hence the matter was referred to court, and there is a judgment as far as that's concerned, and we don't believe that PRASA is upholding that at this point in time, although they are trying to admit that they are upholding it, but there has been difficulties for them. I mean, the recent Mountain View incident where over, what was it, 400 people that were injured and I think about 4 or 5 deaths. If you go and have a look, that could have been avoided had they implemented just one portion of the judge's decision, and that was to have a supervisor in the train control officer, because there was a miscommunication between the driver and the train control officer, to which authority the train control officer gave the train driver to drive to. So that train was under the impression it had a clear route to go to, and hence the fact it then ended up in the back of the standing train, because it was under the impression that the road was clear. But had the supervisor been there and he heard the discussion, he could have possibly avoided that, because he would have said, no, Mr. Train Driver, it's not the correct signal that we're talking about. This is the correct signal.
Yeah.
So that is also avoided, that has also created major problems. And until we get rid of manual authorization, we're going to run the risks of major accidents coming up. We have now taken our course to NEDLAC. We have applied for a Section 77 application that gives us a right to protest legally. And we've had 3 sittings to date where we have met. We've cited the State President's Office, the Vice State, the Deputy President's Office. We've cited the South African Defence Force. We've cited the South African Defence Force. We've cited the Minister of Transport, and we've cited Passenger Rail South Africa. And unfortunately, during the meetings that have taken place, we have had some of the role players that have not even shown their faces at the meeting. And we did meet in March, and we tried to put a report together, but I can assure you that we're miles away from each other. The SAPD indicated to us, but on paper this is what they're doing, and we're saying to you, but your stats are way out. You don't even know what's happening exactly on the road. Then he said, well, it's obviously that our constituents are not reporting the incidents. And obviously the only thing that we've picked up is that the employer doesn't want the employee that has been involved in an incident of where he has been accosted or assaulted or attacked to go and report that. He doesn't take the employee to the South African police station so that he can assist him to make an affidavit, even after he's received obviously treatment because of the shock he's gone through. They don't do that. So the police just say, well, we're not aware of these incidents. So as far as our statistics are concerned, Mr. Union, you are overplaying what you are stating, and we're saying, well, these are our facts. I mean, facts speak for themselves. I mean, when we met the first time at NEDLAC, while we were sitting there, we got a call from one of our employees that collect tickets, and while he asked the passenger for a ticket, the passenger turned around and stabbed him behind the ear and stabbed him in the stomach. Now, I mean, this is totally unacceptable.
It is.
And the other issue that Department of Transport is arguing is, how do you get the SADNF to get involved, because they are taught to kill. And I'm saying no. I mean, if you go to the pre-94, we had the SADF in a lot of the areas just trying to keep and patrolling, and that's what we need. You know, we've got to either come to a position where we say to government, or government needs to take a decision, and that is to say we are going to allow everyone to use the trains free of charge. Or alternatively, we've got to bring in a certain grouping of SADNF trained people how to control crowds, and then also to put them on trains to be able to control the actual people in the train.
The safety and security.
The safety of and security of those people, and because the stations are open, they specifically along the line, you can enter the actual station from any area, and so
there are no booms or anything.
there's no booms. The wire's been cut, so there's no really control as far as that's concerned. And with PRASA entering into agreements with security contractors, it's money that you're throwing down the toilet at the end of the day. Excuse my for saying that, because it's a reality. You cannot expect a person with a baton to control crowds of 600-700.
And those with guns.
And those with guns even worse.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we've had the situation prior to us demanding that they put a security person that's trained with an automatic firearm in the front where we have these incidents. You've had the security running first when incidents happen.
Yeah.
Because
and it almost takes us to a military state. You know, if we start putting armed SANDF.
well, we've requested the state president to declare it an emergency.
Yeah.
Because that's basically what we are finding in the Western Cape. You have that situation where it's totally out of control.
And what if the government just took the decision to say we will only run trains, passenger services in these areas, and leave out the rest?
Well, that's going to be to the detriment of the consumer, of the commuter, and we're not going to be able to deliver on what we agreed to deliver, and that is to have a safe mode of transport from point A to point B. I mean, we are sitting in a country currently where we have the poorest of the poor. They can't afford the luxury of taking expensive taxis as far as that's concerned. And on a daily basis, to take them from Kailicha to Cape Town, the cost is at least 4 or 5 times the cost equivalent to a third-class train ticket. So, you know, you can't afford, or she can't afford, to continually use a taxi for that purpose either.
So is it not also a case of, like, if this is the most cost-effective method of transport and is my only means of transport, is there not a way that you get that collective community, I don't want to say mob, but surely there should be community engagement and involvement to start protecting those assets as well?
PRASA has indicated that they are trying to move back to talk to community and to get the community back on board. But it hasn't happened.
But it also comes down to, are you actually going to provide us with a service?
Well, this is the main problem. You know, you've got to be able to prove to the commuters, I'm going to give you this service, and it's going to be reliable, and it's going to be safe.
The recent move for public transport and passenger rail to be managed and operated by the municipal, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, in the late 90s, mid-90s, there was
operated.
There was a expedition of unions, management, and funny enough, Mr. van der Merwe, that is the head of Gautrain, was part and parcel of that delegation that went and looked at certain Argentinian operators where the municipal was operating the actual train service. But we need to overcome the problems that are faced with, that we are faced with on a daily basis. And we don't believe that the municipal has the financial means and has the ability or the expertise to do it at this point in time. We need to first ensure that we bring in all the upgrades and all the modernized equipment, and possibly that could end as a result sometime in the far future. But in the near future, we cannot foresee that they have the ability to run it. I know that the municipal in Cape Town, the MEC of Transport, has stated on a few occasions that they want to run the service, and now recently Gauteng has also got on board. But I think it's more political speeches than having the ability to be able to run it. I think that they can better suit or better assist by bringing in their security to ensure that the lines that the trains run along are open, and they assist with security, such as what's happened in Cape Town. Since the MEC in Cape Town and PRASA and the SAPD have come to an agreement and they've launched a force, there has been some stabilization of the theft, although we've had a recent train burning.
But that looked like it was an end.
It looks like a once-off situation.
Yeah. So best case scenario would be for PRASA to be reabsorbed into Transnet, especially from, I think, cost perspective.
That's our view at this point in time, and that's what we're pushing for. Even in our Section 77, we've demanded that. That obviously they've stated is not in their mandate to be able to deal with that. They were going to up and refer that to the state president. They say that is in the state president's hands to decide whether he will agree to that or not.
So remind me again, PRASA owes Transnet 1 billion?
1.5 billion.
Just for the use of the main line?
For the use of the main line.
Over what period?
2 years, I think it was.
So that's actually what PRASA would have had to do a whole lot of things.
Exactly. And I mean, apart from that, you could have shared the services of technical people.
Yes.
You could have shared the services of train drivers. You could have shared the services of stations, administrative staff. You understand?
Yeah.
And it would have cut a lot of costs, double costs, out on those mainline passenger services as far as that's concerned.
Okay, so your closing thoughts in terms of current headlines, and I'm not going to specify them, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. What are your thoughts?
Well, we'll have to see who the ministers are that are appointed, and obviously we'll have to take it day by day, and the struggle will have to continue. I don't want to say that we believe that the elected government has the ability at this point in time. The proof is in the pudding. They need to show that whoever is elected has the ability and has the will to want to rectify the wrongs that we find ourselves in, and only time will tell as far as how we're going to do and how we're going to take it forward. We are willing to talk to any role players that can bring about a better service. We believe that, and then hence the fact we have tried to get all the role players around the table that we believe can assist in ensuring that we have a safe and a consistent train service running for all. And obviously we've also made proposals as far as we need to look at other ways and means to be able to run or look at handling signals.
As an established trade association looking after employees in the transport and specifically rail environments, there are obviously similar associations in Africa. Would it not be an idea to meet with them and share experiences and engage in perhaps some commonalities?
Well, obviously, if we get the opportunity and they approach us, we will obviously like to sit down and talk to them. I mean, through our federation, FEDUSA, I know that FEDUSA represents, has got a seat on the African ILO establishment, and if there are unions on that basis that are wanting to talk to us and share differences of experiences and what our labour laws are and what they say and how they can improve their situation, we are quite willing to do that. I mean, we have had the situation where we have even entered into Africa where we have had technical people relieving there on a long-term basis. And so we have, yes, we are willing to do that, specifically to share our experiences and to assist. Because at the end of the day, if we can unify our systems, it will be in the interest of the whole of Africa. I mean, if you just look at the copper trucks that come down from Zambia, between 6 and 10 at a time, running in a tandem. You know, if you can put that on train, you're going to be able to move it far quicker, and you're not going to have border problems. If we can interlink those, yes, we're quite willing to do that.
Fantastic. Steve, thank you very much for your time and an interesting conversation.
Thanks very much. I really enjoyed it.